In essence, what we were talking about is that Equal Pay Day is today, but Equal Pay Day is every day when we look at the disparities based on gender and how people are paid. And what we have talked about so far is that every one of us has a mother, a grandmother, a sister, ourselves, a daughter, a niece who is or has experienced this. Those women who have worked hard, who have worked with passion, and not been paid their value, and often are paid differently than their male counterparts. What we talked about is that this is an issue that should not require that specific or individual woman to fight by herself. It is something that should require national attention with collective action. And it is also founded in the understanding that when you raise the economic status of women, you raise the economic status of families, of communities, and all of society benefits. And so that is the spirit with which we approach this, which is not only about fairness and equity for that individual working person, it is to the benefit of the entire society. I don't need to tell this group, but I'll say it for the sake of the friends who are joining us. On average, women make 82 cents of what men make, 82 cents on the dollar. Black women, 63 cents. Native women, 60 cents. Hispanic women, 55. And Asian American, 87%, or 80 cents on the dollar. So when we look at the issue, we also see the interconnection between race and gender, which is something that is not only about equal pay, but many other issues that we need to address and we do collectively address. When we look at the reasons, we know that there are a couple of reasons. One, when we look at, of course, pay discrimination, we have to demand transparency. So that's one of the things that many of us have worked on together, which is, again, let's not make that woman prove and have to go through all of the steps that often might require litigation to prove the inequity and the unfairness of her situation and circumstance in terms of not being paid equal for equal work. We should require the system itself to be transparent and display and share for everyone how they are paying their workforce and whether there is parity and equity in the way that that is being done. And so for that reason, we have to hold employers accountable. We have to hold corporations accountable to put the onus not on that singular woman who is probably also challenged with trying to get daycare going. Maybe she's in what we call the sandwich generation, is she taking care of children and parents, trying to juggle everything else, and then also having to prove with the thing that should be proven in terms of the burden being placed not on her, but on the employer themselves. We know that women, and to this point, take a greater share of caregiving in households, and so they are more likely to work part-time. They are more likely to perhaps not take full advantage of what might be promotions or extra work, and because that would require her to work around the clock or at hours that she cannot work because of her responsibilities in terms of her family. We should be looking at that too on the issue of pay equity, which is what are we doing in the workplace to allow women to pursue their career, to seek advancement without having to take on so many sacrifices because of the other traditional duties of a woman, especially in the context of a family. We should also appreciate that women are overrepresented in professions that are underpaid. And so let's address that. 2 in 3 workers making federal minimum wage or less are women. And just so everyone is clear, I know all the friends are, federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. The math on that is $15,000 a year for working a 40-hour week. So let's deal with that. Let's deal with the fact that 1 in 3 of those women are women of color. So these are some of the issues. Then before I close my comments, I'll also mention what we have sought to address in terms of this issue in the context then of the pandemic, which, as many of us know, has been, what I like to say, it's been an accelerator in many ways those things that were fissures and fractures and failures of the system that existed since the beginning of time, only became more apparent and exaggerated during the course of the pandemic. And so that relates to everything in terms of affordable child care, the availability of child care, paid sick leave, paid family leave, all of those issues that contribute to the disparities in the workplace based on gender. So one of the things that we did with the American Rescue Plan is recognizing that over 2 million women had to leave the workforce. We attempted to address it in terms of doing what we could to acknowledge the widening wage gap, address that around issues, again, about childcare and small businesses, but also about the checks that we sent out, $1,400 checks, and I'm told that we reached the 100 millionth check today. But the idea was to get folks and get workers, including women workers, to have the assistance they need to survive these days to get back up on their feet. And then we also are dealing with, in the American Rescue Plan, a vision, and the vision is about what we need to do around the care infrastructure, what we need to do, and I know we have a number of folks who are leaders in this regard in this meeting. Small businesses, one of my particular areas of focus, and I'm really excited about it, been working with Janet Yellen, is around access to capital for small businesses, and with a particular sight on what is happening with women-owned small businesses and minority-owned small businesses. There is the work we need to do around giving workers a voice and giving them their power. Recently, I convened, and some of them are on the Zoom, women leaders in labor, in organized labor, unions, talking about what we need to do collectively, again, to uplift and understand the value and the dignity of work, but also see the connection between women who work as union members and pay disparities, meaning they actually better pay when they are a member of union than when they are not. And so how are we dealing with that? And the bottom line is this. This is an issue that should not be and is not just a woman's issue. You know, I've been the first woman in many positions I've held. And people say, well then, talk to me about women's issues. You know, these reporters that put a microphone in front of you, talk to me about women's issues. And I look at them and I say, you know what? I am so glad you want to talk about the economy. Because that's the reality. When you deal with the economic condition of America, you must address the economic condition of women. And with that, I will now turn the proverbial microphone over to the chair of our Council on Economic Advisors, C.C. Rouse.
Thank you, Vice President Harris, and thank you for holding this important discussion. Over the last year, economic activity slowed as we endured a once-in-a-century pandemic, as you just described. Today, over 4 million fewer women are working than a year ago. Millions more have had to reduce their hours. Women were overrepresented in industries hardest hit by the pandemic, such as leisure and hospitality. They were also more likely to have reduced work hours as they took care of children sent home from childcare and school, and as well as elderly parents in need of home care. This has hit women of color particularly hard and eroded more than 30 years of progress women have made in the labor force. With vaccines rolling out, this country is on the brink of economic recovery. But even as the economy begins to accelerate, it will likely take longer for women to benefit. The longer workers are out of the workforce, the harder it is for them to return. Further, until children are back in school and childcare full-time, it will be harder for women in particular to get back to work. The American Rescue Plan will help women and families weather this crisis by extending and supplementing unemployment insurance benefits, safely reopening schools, expanding childcare assistance, providing economic support to households across the country, and helping Americans stay in their homes. It is critical life support to a country crippled by the pandemic and resulting economic damage. But the ultimate goal cannot simply be to bring us back to the status quo. If nothing else, the pandemic laid bare what many already knew. There are long-standing barriers in this country that have prevented women from fully participating in the labor force. Until we take them on full force, our economy will not realize its potential. Neither will the women who contribute so very much. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And let's see, and then now I'm going to pass it over, I'm going to now introduce to everyone the great Heather Boucher, who is a member of our Council on Economic Advisors. Heather.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Vice President, for hosting this really important conversation. Thank you, Cecilia, for your great remarks. So, the COVID-19 pandemic has unmasked underlying fragilities across our economy. It's exposed the vulnerabilities in our care system while showing how foundational the care economy is. Without it, people cannot get to work. Women still bear the brunt of our nation's care crisis. As the pandemic raged, family members fell ill, schools and child care centers closed, and services for older Americans shuttered. Women took on added responsibilities, and women experienced the job losses in the care sector. 9 in 10 workers in the care economy are women, and 1 in 3 are workers of color. Pre-pandemic, the care economy was already in crisis. Care jobs are among the fastest growing in our economy, yet too many of those workers are underpaid, they lack on-the-job protections, they live in poverty, and while too many families can barely afford the costs of that care. On top of this, too many of those workers lack access to paid leave and cannot be there when their family needs them. All of these challenges loom larger for those on the lower end, the lower leg of that K-shaped economy that we talk so much about. To ensure American competitiveness, we must invest in the care economy. And the American Rescue Plan is a giant leap forward. There are resources for schools and child care centers to reopen safely and pay their workers, for families to cover the costs of care, for emergency paid leave. We also need to shore up the foundation of our economy through investing in comprehensive care infrastructure to ensure that both women and their families can access the care they need, and that those caring for our nation have good jobs. These are part of the way that we close that pay gap, and so that we will have an economy that works for all.
That's right. Well, there we have it.